In the wake of the Mueller Report's release and Attorney General William Barr's handling of it, Democrats are for the most part livid. But President Trump, he's doing a victory lap, and many Republicans, maybe not too surprisingly, are joining in. Take a listen to Congressman Peter King. We caught up with a Republican from Long Island earlier today.
First of all, there was no collusion, so he's 100% honest on that. And he believes there was no obstruction, and so does the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General. I mean, I've gone through the instances that Mueller said could have been obstruction. He didn't say they were. He said they could have been, and I think they were legitimate actions by the president, which he was entitled to take, as far as firing Jim Comey, as far as asking Jim Comey not to go after General Flynn. Comey had told us in the Intelligence Committee he didn't think that General Flynn had lied. So that's all. None of that constitutes obstruction. The bottom line is he cooperated more than anyone could ever be expected to cooperate.
Democrats, as you'd expect, didn't agree with the congressman. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, they're calling the AG irresponsible and slanted. Now the House Speaker and the Senate Minority Leader, they want Mueller to testify before Congress. New York Democrat Jerry Nadler, he agrees. The head of the House Judiciary Committee formally requested Mueller to appear before Congress no later than May 23rd. Nadler is also issuing a subpoena to see the report in its entirety. I should note the redactions we were so worried about turned out to be more minimal in scope. And then we get to California Congressman Adam Schiff, who's a very known and influential figure at all this. He's the head of the Intelligence Committee. He said this today.
The report outlines multiple attempts by the president to mislead the country, to interfere with the investigation, to make false statements to the American people, and to urge others to lie to the American people, to urge those of his staff to take action to the investigation, which may have been refused, but they were not refused owing to any goodwill or good motive on the president's part, far to the contrary.
And for more, let's bring in Senator Chris Murphy, the Democrat from Connecticut. He joins us now. Senator, I know that you want to see the complete unredacted report. What is the role of Congress now that the report is out, at least in the main? Explain to the audience, where does Congress now come in? Now that you have the findings, what do you do next?
Well, clearly the first question is whether you have to take action with respect to wrongdoing by the executive branch. Impeachment is obviously the remedy at the disposal of Congress. That's a serious remedy, but we have to, take a look at what's in this report and decide whether or not the president can stay in office. It's not a legal standard; it's a political standard, so it will take some time to work through. We also have to, make sure that we shore up our defenses. And at the heart of the Mueller report is an attack by a foreign government against the United States that is not being taken seriously by this administration. So Congress is going to continue to need to take steps in order to make sure that the Russians don't come back again in 2020 and try to manipulate this election. So we've probably got some policy steps that we need to take now that we've got the fullest rendering ever of all of the things that the Russians did to try to steal an election.
Put the White House out for a second here. You're on foreign relations. Do you think you have willing partners across the aisle to take this seriously, given the depth of what was in the report about how intentional and coherent the Russians were to interfere with our elections? The former DNI, James Clapper, said this was devastating in terms of what they did, and it confirmed the worst suspicions. Do people have the appetite on the Hill to do something about it?
Well, I hope they do. We have come together in the past, in the recent past. In fact, we came together, Republicans and Democrats, to pass a couple $100 million that went out to the states to shore up election defenses for voting systems. We should do that again. We've had a little bit of trouble getting Republicans to agree to a second round of funding. It doesn't help that the administration, still doesn't really understand the depth of the Russian interference and isn't really willing to work with Republicans in Congress, push Republicans in Congress to do something about it. But we have found common ground in the past, and I think there are a lot of Republicans who take seriously our obligation to stop the Russians or any foreign government from trying to do again what the Russians did in 2016.
Replete through this report, Senator, was that the president routinely tried to obstruct this investigation, and he was saved from obstruction largely because people wouldn't carry out his orders. We know the problems with the truth that people have attached to not only the president, but a lot of people he's associated with. How problematic is it to you that we've gotten to the point where it's confirmed, it's hard for generally people, but I would imagine you guys on the Hill to trust anything that comes out of the White House. Am I fairly putting it this way, where you just don't believe what the president says?
Well, I mean, the president's been a daily lying and fabrication machine since he first got elected. So, I mean, I don't take anything the president says at face value, and no American should. He's in the business of not telling the truth. And unfortunately, we've become kind of anesthetized to it in this country. So we have to do our own fact-finding when we get statements from the president. And I think most of us have come to get used to that fact.
In terms of the public's confidence in the institutions of government right now, we saw the performance today by Mr. Barr. We've seen, obviously, a report paint a very different picture than the one he laid out. We know what the president did repeatedly over the course of the investigation, or attempted to do with it. Should the public be concerned that the institutions of government that we take for granted are actually functioning?
Well, government is functioning, right? I mean, the president still has to deal with Congress in order to get any of his dangerous ideas passed. And whether it has, been his proposal to gut the American healthcare system by repealing the Affordable Health Care Act, or trying to get Congress to appropriate money for a wall that nobody wants, he hasn't gotten his way. Now, he is trying some end arounds. He has tried to sabotage the healthcare system on his own. He's trying to steal money from military projects to build a portion of his wall. But, Congress has been able to stand up to this president. Republicans occasionally have been willing to do the right thing, and I hope that that will continue. And, in the end, that's why we have elections. If people don't like the way that this administration is handling its business, in less than 2 years, they'll have a chance to say something about that.
Good enough. Senator, I know you got a busy schedule. I appreciate the time today. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
So when we come back, with all the clutter and chatter out there, it is really easy, and I can appreciate, to lose track of what the Mueller probe was actually all about. The Russians, they meddled in our election. Fact. And that makes the president's victory lap all the more, frankly, disagreeable.